if you guys want to see the schedule, it's bit.ly/Phidgets_webinar. And here's our schedule for today. So the idea today is that we're going to be reviewing the sensors that you've received, and we're going to be reviewing them in Python. So as I mentioned earlier, there was 2 sensors that were sent out. So at this point, everyone should have a getting started kit that looks like this. So you all have this, and then we will have sent you either a sonar sensor, which looks like this, or a light sensor, which looks like this. So I'm going to start with the light sensor, and I would encourage you guys, if you have the light sensor, to plug it in, and you guys can code log with me and ask me questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is review the Python configuration. So as we have mentioned in the past, we like using Thonny. So this is what Thonny looks like. The reason that we like using Thonny is because it is bundled with Python. So if you're in a classroom setting, it's really nice to not have to worry about your which version of Python you have and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in using Thonny, the website is thonny.org. And you can install it at the top here. So okay, so for Phidgets, to get Phidgets working with Python on Thonny, all you're doing is you're going to Tools, you're going to Manage Packages, and then you're searching for Phidget 22 native, and then you're going to hit Find Packages. So this will bring you to this page, and there'll be an Install button down here. So I've already installed, and that's all you have to do. So once you hit that button, it will pull down everything you need. So there's no installs. You don't need your tech team to come in and help out. You can just kind of do it yourself and you're done. And again, this is why, so we're now talking about advanced sensors. The content of how to install Phidgets is covered in the Getting Started kit. So if you guys look on the Getting Started kit, you have the link phidgets.com/start. So if we go to that, just to give you guys the review, this will be covered in this configure section right here. So if I'm using Python with Thonny, it will be covered. All these instructions I'm saying will be covered here. So again, open Thonny, manage packages, etc. But at this point, we're assuming that you've kind of completed the Getting Started kit or you have an understanding of it. So that's all you would do. Manage packages, Phidget 22 native, install. So at that point, your computer's set up and ready to work with Phidgets. So no installing, Chris asked if installing packages requires admin access. No, it does not. So you should be good. Okay, so I have my environment set up, and the next thing I'm going to do is start coding. So at this point, everyone who has a light sensor, if you can plug in your light sensor to your Vint hub. So basically it should look like this. You have a light sensor connected to your Vint hub, and you can put it on any port, doesn't matter which port. And then you're plugging this end into your computer. So I'm gonna plug my light sensor back in. Okay, awesome. So now that I have my light sensor plugged in, my next step is to find the device tutorial for the light sensor. So on the education page, this is our kind of main landing page. If you go to Learn, you'll see these kind of 3 categories. So the Getting Started kit is level 1. So at this point, because you're working with advanced sensors, we've assumed that you've completed, the Getting Started kit. So for a student, they've done the Getting Started kit. They're looking for what's next. So now they'll go to level 2. So you give them a light sensor and say, hey, go to level 2, and there'll be a little project for you. So if we click on level 2, we see this list of kind of recommended sensors. So this is a small percentage of like the total sensors we have, but they're sensors we've identified that work well in education, and they're kind of simple and they're a good next step. So I have the light sensor, so I'm going to be looking for it on this list, and I see it right here. So I'm going to click through to the light sensor. So I've gone to the device tutorials page, and then I've selected the light sensor. So this page is kind of similar to the Getting Started kit, where it will give you a little bit of information about what you're going to be doing. So just a little bit of an overview, and then we scroll down and we see the setup. So again, that is the exact same setup that I have here. So I have the light sensor connected to the Vint hub. I just have a different length cable. So we'll keep scrolling down and we'll get to the code section. So just like the Getting Started kit, depending on your language, you can select, there's a little button here as well. You can select. So again, I'm using Python with Thonny. So that's what I have selected, but you can change to whatever you're using. And then this code will change based on that selection. So this is the very basic light sensor program. So the idea is that students will copy it. So you will use the copy button up here, and that should put it on your clipboard. And then we'll open Thonny, and we could paste that in. Okay, so now I have Thonny open. I have the code pasted in, and I'm just gonna wait to run it. So everyone who has a light sensor can be at this point. The next step will be running it. Actually, the next step, it'll prompt us to save the file because it's not saved. So if I press run, it will say, hey, you need to save this. So I'll save this as light sensor webinar, and that will save the file. And now it's running. So basically copying that in, and now I have this light sensor data streaming into my program. So what I can do is I can kind of cover it with my hand, and you guys will see those values drop down close to 0. And then if I release it, you can see the value increase. So that is the very basic light sensor program. So what I want to just briefly talk about is what this code actually is doing. So just like every other program, at the top here, we have these import statements. So all this is doing, when we did that Phidget 22 install, Phidget 22 native install, that pulled down our library files from that package that we installed. Just, I want to reference the light sensor class because that's what we're using. So the next step is we're importing time. So we use time in our programs just to provide a delay. So for example, if I stop this program and I ran it without this sleep statement, the result will be the exact same. The only difference is that basically your computer is going to be kind of like pounding through that while loop as fast as possible, which is not really necessary. The sensor is not updating. Like this is probably like a 4 gigahertz processor. So like there's just like it's gonna be going through there super fast. So by putting the sleep statement in, you can see that I'm just getting like a kind of nice stream of data that is easy to manage. If I want to write that to a file, if I want to do something with it, it's kind of nicer and easier to manage. Now, the next line after time is I'm creating the light sensor object. So again, this side of the statement is kind of like what's important. This is the light sensor class from Phidgets. So what I could do on the left side, just like any other variable, I could change this to be like, hey, this is X, or this is Y, whatever. It doesn't matter. We just say light sensor because it makes the program more readable. So the next step after, so now we have created this light sensor object. The next step is we're going to be opening it. So again, what this does is, this is kind of, there's an overview of this in the Getting Started kit, but basically what's happening is we've created the software object and we're saying to our computer, hey, there should be a physical like light sensor, a Phidget light sensor that's connected to my computer, and I'd like to use it. So basically we're opening it and we're waiting for the computer to find it. So this number here, all this does is it provides a timeout value. So if I increase, so say I unplug my Phidget. So I've just unplugged my light sensor. And if I try to run this code, we'll get an exception here. So the exception says, no Phidgets were detected at all. Make sure your device is attached. So what this value does, say I increase this to 5,000, that would be 5 seconds, and let's do 3,000. So say I did that 3,000, that would mean, let me know that this thing is not available in 3 seconds. So like 1, 2, 3, and I should get an error here. So that's all that statement does. This 3,000, 1,000, it's just basically saying like, wait for a second to try to find this physical Phidget. And the reason that exists is because when you're dealing with a larger, I'm just trying to plug in my light sensor again. When you're dealing with a larger kind of like project, say, and you had like some customers have 100, 200, 300 Phidgets, there's actually a delay involved. So it's kind of nice to just be able to be like, hey, okay, if after like 10 seconds something's not connecting, then I probably have an error. But for students, they don't really need to worry about that. So we always just put 1,000 because they're usually working with a small number of devices. Okay. And then after the open call, if this proceeds, we know that we have attached to the Phidget and we can start getting data from it. So this is the line that we are interested in. It's light sensor.get illuminance. So that line is going to be getting the most recent value, the most recent light value, illuminance value that the sensor has measured. So basically that's kind of like the main line. What we've done here is we've just kind of wrapped it in a nice, like, sentence. So illuminance, and we've added, we've changed this to a string, and we've put the unit at the end. But that doesn't necessarily matter. I'm not necessarily a Python guy, so this might be wrong, but let's see. If I just say get illuminance like that, it should have the same result. It'll just print the value instead of having the nice, so here you can see 462, so it's just printing that value. So that is basically it for a basic light sensor program. So if you have the light sensor, this is going to get you started on actually getting values from it. So again, the cool thing about Phidgets is that, in order to do this, I'm plugging in a sensor, I'm writing 1, 2, 3 lines of code, and I have access to this like high quality light data. Okay, so that is the very basic light sensor program. I'm going to talk after about what to do next with the light sensor, but right now I'm going to transition to the Sonar, just so that people who have the Sonar can also follow along. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the Vint hub, I'm disconnecting it. So there's a tab on the device. So if you push the tab, you guys probably can't see that, but there's a little tab. So if you push it down and you pull, that is the best way to release it. Some students don't notice the tab, so they just try to yank it out. But the best way is to basically apply like a downward force and just kind of slide it out. So I have a Sonar. So the Sonar unit looks like this. So now all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be just plugging it in. Okay, awesome. So now I have the Sonar and it's pointed at the ceiling of the room I'm in. Okay, so just like I did with the light sensor, I'm going to be going to level 2, which is device tutorials. So again, we're assuming that the student has gone through this kit, they have a basic understanding of Phidgets, and now we are kind of throwing them at an advanced sensor. So they're going to be going to level 2. So I click on level 2, and it will bring me back to this device tutorials page. Okay, and I'm going to be looking for the Sonar. So the Sonar is right here, and I'll click on that. So again, just like we had with the light sensor and just like we have with the getting started kit, we have the description up top. So again, this is our setup, just like everything else. We have the what we're expecting the students to put together on their desk. So I have the exact same setup here, Vint hub, Sonar, and then it's connected to my PC. So we'll scroll down. Again, we have the code in Python. So I mentioned this earlier, but if you guys are just coming in, very similar to the Getting Started Kit, if you're using a different language, you can select it from here. So if I selected C#, for example, now my code changes to VC#, but I'm using Python. Okay, so I'm going to copy my code. And what I'm going to be doing is, because we've already set up that project, I'm just going to be pasting it directly into it. Okay, so now I have the program pasted into Thonny. So again, very similar to the light sensor. The only difference is that I'm now importing the distance sensor. So if I run this code, I'm getting a value in millimeters. So right now, this is pointed at the ceiling. If I put my hand in front of it, you'll see that it comes down and is detecting the hand. So this distance sensor is spitting out its distance. So if you guys are using it, does anyone notice anything happening if they go too close to the sensor? Are you noticing any kind of error or something? So what's happening is, yes, exactly. So Chris says the value is unknown. Okay, so we'll quickly talk about what that means. So I can do that. I'll show you guys how that happens. If I go really close, I'm going to get an error in my code that says, hey, like, what's happening? The value is unknown. So this is because the Sonar sensor has a limit. So basically it measures from 40 millimeters to, I think like 10 meters is the max. So the idea is that, hey, like this thing was closer than 40 millimeters, like what's happening? So one way that might be interesting for you guys to explain this to your students is to add something like this. So I'm not sure if you guys are teaching try-excepts. I know some classes are, but if I put something like this in my code, a try-except, and I said, hey, like too low, what's happening? If I did something like that and I ran this code, so I'll get my output showing, and then I go really close again, now you'll see that printing, hey, too low, what's happening? I'm just gonna go back to the light sensor, see if I can just control Z it. Yeah, I can. Okay, so this is, I just control Z this all the way to the light sensor, just to show you guys the example there. If I have the light sensor running, and I just have it running, I just connected it. Oop, what's wrong? Okay, there it is. Okay, so I have the light sensor connected. And just to show you the same thing, if you do have a light sensor, I'm just going to take my phone and I'm going to, I'll turn on the flashlight. So I should be able to saturate the sensor by like putting the flashlight really close. So there you go. You can see the error because again, it's outside of the expected range. And then I can do the exact same thing, try, and then put an accept here. Hey, way too bright. And then that would print out if it was outside the range. This is not really something that is, it's more common on the distance sensor just because kids are like going really close and far. Okay, so we've now completed the lux, reviewing the lux, reviewing the sonar fidget. So sensors are available. So I just wanted to go over this quickly just to show you and just make sure everyone understands what the education page means. So if we go to education again, so phidgets.com/education, and we go to the Learn tab, and we go to Device Tutorials. So this is showing you a list of devices that we have recommended for education. So what recommended means is we have, they're kind of like easy to use, so they're a nice step up from the Getting Started kit. They're not too advanced. And also it means that we've created these tutorials that you're seeing on my screen now. And it also means that we've created projects for them. So the next step is the projects tab. So after a student has, the light sensor and they've done the basic device tutorial, which actually has I guess I probably didn't mention that. There's a little at the bottom of these, there's an application. So this is the page that we went to, device tutorials. At the bottom, after they've ran their code, there's actually like a little project. So this could probably take a class or two for the student to complete. And this one is, for example, using it to, they replaced the humidity sensor and they put the light sensor inside the box. And then when the box opens or closes, like the light sensor detects that and kind of like, is like, hey, the box is open, hey, the box is closed. But there is some practice there to add to that value for the sensor. So you have like that project. And then the next step is this project here. So again, level 3 is projects. So if we scroll down, there'll always be a project. So this is like the light sensor has a project because it's in that device tutorials page. It also has this project. So this is like a screen time monitoring project. So we have these kind of, if it's in the device tutorials page, it'll always have extra projects attached to it. So here's like the light fidget. All you need is the light fidget and I could say a cell phone. And the idea for this one is that you're setting I think there's a GIF here. Yeah. So you're setting the phone down on the light sensor. And then when you pull it up, it logs how much time. Like, it's like if it's up, then that means you're using it. And if you put it down, it logs how much time it's down for. But there's all these like little projects that kind of allow students to explore a little bit more of the code and a little bit more of the sensor, and also just give you as a teacher more value for that dollar spent on the sensor, because obviously that's a concern. I don't want to spend $10 on the sensor and then it's only good for 10 minutes. So that is the next step of the sensors. So I think I just had, I had forgotten to mention that. So that is on the education page, anything under the device tutorials page. So all of these sensors will have those projects tied to them. However, these are not the only sensors that are available, obviously. So if you guys have been, if you're familiar with Phidgets and you've been around our company for a little while, you'll already know this. But if I go to our main page, Phidgets.com, and I click on the sensors tab, and then I go to all sensors. So this button up here, so Phidgets.com, sensors, all sensors. This will actually show me like the full catalog of Phidget sensors that are available. So you can see here I have 161 sensors. So these are all different types of sensors that will allow you to interface with basically any kind of system or any kind of input output that you want. So this is the real device page. The only difference is that if you pick a device on here that is not on the device tutorials page, there won't be extra there won't be assessment and practice and projects. And Yolanda says pricing for education, same. So the pricing is basically anything you see here will be 40% off. And the idea is that you first have to have purchased a getting started kit, like a class set for your classroom. So say you have like a class set it's a loose term right now. So say you've bought 5 getting started kits, then you will have access to that. But the idea is that we want students to be going through the getting started kit just because it's a really good source of information on how to actually use Phidgets. So that's why we've done that, is because we really want students to kind of like first go through that kit so that they have success when they go to other devices and projects. Yeah, so this is the whole list. And again, you take 40% off these prices. And if you're in Canada, I think there's probably a few Canadians in this chat. Just make sure that you change your default because it defaults to USD. And then you'll get 40% off those prices. So in general, it ends up being fairly reasonable for classrooms. The one thing to remember is that they're probably going to be, like if you looked at sensors on like AliExpress or something, they'll probably be more pricey than that. But the idea is that these should last you like 5 to 10 years in your classroom, no problem. Okay, so that is the sensors that are available. And I guess I should also mention there's this controllers tab, and controllers are things that you're controlling a device. So for example, like I'm controlling a motor or something. So let's say this is a device that I did the firmware for. So this is a motor Phidget. So it's controlling like a 25 amp motor. So there's also a large number of these. So there's 63 of these. And you also get the same discounts with these. Basically anything you see on this site. So if you want to just buy motors, like if you're a class that's really interested in motors and you want to buy a motor, your discount applies to everything. So it's a really good source to get some kind of like high quality parts for a reasonable price for education. Oh, this is something I did want to cover. So how to use multiple sensors. So this is a question that was asked, I think by Chris earlier, was about daisy chaining. Is I'm going to plug in my light sensor, and I'm also going to plug in my sonar sensor. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'll plug in the light sensor and the humidity Phidget. So I'm just going to get a cable. So I got an extra Phidget here, and I'm plugging it into my vent hub. So I'm just going to pick any port. So basically, I have a light sensor and a humidity sensor. And all you have to do is, if you look at my screen, I'm just going to import temperature sensor. So I'm going to import that class. I'm going to create the Phidget. So instead of a light sensor, I have a temperature sensor. So let's do that. And then I'm going to open it. So just like this, I'm going to open it. And then I'm going to get data. So this would be where you would probably reference the product page. So this is degree C, and I'm going to say temp sensor dot get temperature. So for you guys, just because I kind of I know the API, so I know what functions to use, but this would be all you do. So you would make sure that you always have the class. You can add objects. So if I had, another light sensor, I would add another light sensor, and then you would run it. So this should work. Let's see. So here you can see I have my temperature in degrees Celsius and I have my luminance. So if you're using multiple Phidgets, that is not a problem at all. I just want to see, let's see where my chat is. Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you're using multiple Phidgets, that's super easy, and that's the whole point of Phidgets. The idea is that they're modular, so you have the vent hub and you can plug in as many sensors as you want. And then Maria's saying, okay, what if you have 2 of the same sensors? So this is a really good point. So I'm going to plug in, I don't have 2 light sensors right now, but I have 2 humidity sensors. So what I'm going to do is now I have in my VinTub, I just unplugged the light sensor. I have 2 humidity sensors plugged in. So now the only difference with this is, so let's get rid of the code that has the light sensor. So let's say I have 2 temperature sensors. Boom, temperature sensor 1, temperature sensor 2. Okay, done. So I got to do the same thing with opening it. So 2 is opening, 1 is opening, and then I need to read data. So the only difference is, and I'm just going to say something like temperature 2. Okay. So the main difference when you're opening 2 sensors, if you want to know which sensor is which you probably do. So say you had one sensor mounted like in a fridge and one mounted in the freezer or something. What you would do is you would add the line here. So this is going back to that addressing section. So this is all covered in the getting started kit. We've all heard about addressing, but the idea is that you would say something like, okay, temp sensor dot. Okay, so the call is set hub port. Okay, so basically what this is doing is, so say I want temp sense, let's just say this one, temp sensor. Say I want that one to be the one that's on hub port 5. So right now I have one on hub port 5 and I have one on hub port 2. So if I want temp sense to be the one on hub port 5, all I have to say is like, hey, this is the one that's on hub port 5. And that will be enough to differentiate them. If I mean, I could also do this and just say, hey, this one is on hub port 2, which is probably good for your code, just like readability. And then if I ran this, it would, now I know that temperature sensor 2 is the one that's on hub port 5. So basically, once you have more than one sensor of the same type, you would use addressing to make sure that your software kind of understands which one's which. But yeah, you can have a lot of them connected to your computer and have no issues. I'm running out of time here. So the last thing I wanted to just quickly touch on is if you do have a lot of, like say you have Arduinos in your class or you have microbits and you have different types of sensors. So one of them that I pulled out was something like this. So you guys may have seen a sensor that looks like this, or similar to like a slider. The idea of this is that it's just a voltage sensor. So basically, as I'm sliding this, the amount of voltage that kind of like comes out is changed, it's variable. So I just wanted to show that you can, if you say you have like a temperature sensor for your Arduino that is analog. So analog just means, again, it's like outputting a voltage. You can interface with these sensors. You would just use, basically what I have is I'm connecting it to the VinTub. So I'm connecting it with this cable because we sell this one. But if you had a sensor that had a different configuration, what you could actually do is just like either you could make your own cable or you could buy a Phidgets cable and then just kind of like take this end apart and kind of make it work. A lot of them have the same configuration with like the 3 pins. So a lot of the times it just works. But anyways, I would just plug this into my VinTub and then I would use something like a voltage input, and then I could measure, I could be like, what is that thing called? Slider equals voltage input. And then I would have to set the hub port because it's not a smart device. So that means that there's no microcontroller on it. And then I could address it to hub port 2. Open it, and then say like slider is equal to get voltage. So anyways, this will just give me a voltage. And if I slide this, you can see the voltage going down and up. But the idea behind this again is that if you do have a bunch of analog sensors in your class, like don't feel like you have to like throw them away or something. It's something that can be used with Phidgets, and if you contact our education team, we can always point you in the right direction of like how to actually set that up and how to do the wiring. But it is a nice way because some of these sensors are really quite cheap. So, it's nice to be able to reuse them. So with that, I think I'm basically bang on for time.